The orbital sander hummed against the curve of the hull, sending fine wood dust spiraling through the afternoon light. Evan Dorsey worked with the practiced rhythm of someone who'd spent 20 years coaxing beauty from raw timber, his hands steady as he shaped the boat's belly. The workshop smelled of cedar and varnish, of honest work that didn't require words or explanations. Outside, rain tapped against the tin roof in a steady percussion that made the space feel smaller, safer. His phone vibrated on the workbench. He ignored it. The sander whined higher as he pressed into a stubborn patch. It rang again. Evan killed the power and set the tool down, brushing sawdust from his forearms. The screen showed Lily's name. His niece never called. She was 9, and kids that age sent garbled texts with too many emojis, or they got their parents to call for them. He swiped to answer. "Hey, Lil. Uncle Evan." Her voice came through thin and wrong, like something had been scraped out of it. "Dads, they said it was a car crash." The workshop tilted. Evan gripped the edge of the bench, his other hand pressing the phone harder against his ear, as if that would make the words different. "What?" Lily slowed down. "Where are you?" "The hospital. Lake Haven General. Mom's here, but she's—" A shuffle of noise, voices in the background. "Uncle Evan, please come." The line went dead. He stood there for a moment, staring at the half-finished hull. Aaron, his younger brother by 3 years, the one who'd followed him everywhere as a kid, who'd cried at their parents' funeral and gripped Evan's hand so hard it left marks. The brother who called every Sunday, without fail, to talk about nothing and everything. Evan grabbed his keys and was out the door before his brain caught up with his body. The drive to Lake Haven took 40 minutes through winding back roads slick with October rain. Evan's truck hydroplaned twice, and he barely noticed. His knuckles were white on the wheel. The radio played something forgettable, and he switched it off. The silence felt appropriate, like the world was holding its breath. He tried calling Aaron's phone. It rang 6 times and went to voicemail. "Aaron, it's me. Call me back. Please." His mind raced through possibilities. Car crash. Aaron drove a sensible sedan, always under the speed limit. He'd been the careful one, the one who double-checked locks and wore his seatbelt before starting the engine. A crash didn't fit. The hospital parking lot gleamed with wet pavement. Evan parked crooked across 2 spaces and ran for the entrance. The ICU smelled like death pretending to be clean. Antiseptic and floor wax. The metallic tang of blood hidden under layers of bleach and air freshener. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a sickly pale glow that made healthy people look like ghosts. A nurse directed Evan to room 7. His boots squeaked on the linoleum. Down the hall, someone was sobbing. A doctor hurried past with a clipboard, eyes down. He found the room and stopped in the doorway. Aaron lay in the bed, barely recognizable. Tubes snaked from his arms, his nose, his chest. A ventilator breathed for him with mechanical precision, the rhythm too perfect to be human. His face was swollen on one side, mottled purple and yellow, and 4 drip fed into his arm. Monitors beeped a steady cadence that somehow sounded lonely. Evan's throat closed. Beside the bed stood Marla. Aaron's wife wore a black dress that probably cost more than Evan's truck payment. Her makeup was immaculate, foundation smooth, eyeliner precise, lips a perfect nude. She held a tissue in one manicured hand, dabbing at eyes that didn't look particularly wet. "Oh, Evan." Her voice carried that breathy quality she used when she wanted sympathy. "Thank God you're here. It's so awful." Evan couldn't look away from his brother. "What happened?" "The brakes failed. His car went off the road near Widow's Bend." Marla touched Aaron's hand lightly, barely a graze of fingertips. "The doctors said he hit his head. There's swelling in the brain. They don't know if he'll—" She trailed off, bringing the tissue to her nose. Evan stepped closer to the bed. Aaron's chest rose and fell with the ventilator's push. A plastic clip on his finger measured oxygen. Numbers on the monitor shifted and held. "Where's Lily?" "In the waiting room." I thought it was too much for her to see him like this. Something in Evan's chest tightened. He glanced at Marla, really looked at her. She'd positioned herself at the perfect angle, where the light from the window caught her face just right. Her posture was composed, sad but not devastated, more like an actress playing a widow in a daytime drama. "I need to see Lily." "Of course." Marla's smile was small, understanding. "I should call the insurance company anyway. There's so much to handle." She left with a whisper of expensive perfume. Evan waited until her footsteps faded, then pulled a chair close to Aaron's bed. He took his brother's hand carefully, avoiding the four. The skin felt wrong, too cool, too still. "Aaron," he whispered, "I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." The machines beeped their response. The door opened softly. Lily slipped inside, small and pale in her school uniform. Her gray eyes, Aaron's eyes, were red-rimmed and huge in her face. Evan held out his arm, and she came to him, pressing against his side. He wrapped her in close. "Is he going to wake up?" she asked. "The doctors are doing everything they can." She stared at her father for a long moment. Then she tugged Evan's sleeve, pulling him down so she could whisper directly in his ear. "Uncle Evan, this wasn't an accident." He went very still. "What do you mean?" Lily glanced at the door, then back at him. Her small face was serious, older than 9. "Look at Dad's side." Under his shirt, Evan frowned but stood, moving to the other side of the bed. A nurse had been in recently. The gown was loose, not fully tied. He lifted the edge carefully. There, just below Aaron's ribs on the left side, was a thin red line. It looked almost like a burn, straight and deliberate. Not the kind of mark you got from a seatbelt or impact. More like something had been pressed against his skin. Something electric. "What is this?" Evan breathed. "I don't know." Lily's voice was small but certain. "But yesterday, I heard Mom on the phone. I was supposed to be asleep, but I came downstairs for water. She was in the kitchen, and she said." She swallowed hard. "He won't wake up this time." The world seemed to contract, pulling tight around Evan. He looked at his niece, searching her face for any sign of confusion or imagination. He found only grim certainty. "This time," he repeated slowly. Lily nodded. "There was another accident last year. Dad fell down the stairs. He said he slipped, but—" Evan's mind spun. He remembered that. Aaron had called him from the hospital, laughing it off as clumsiness. A mild concussion, some bruised ribs. Nothing serious. But now, with Lily's words hanging in the air, it took on a different shape. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" "I wasn't sure. Mom's always nice when people are around. And Dad, he loves her so much." Tears finally spilled down Lily's cheeks. "I thought maybe I heard wrong. But now he's here, and she's already talking about money, and—" She broke off, crying silently. Evan pulled her close again, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. Over her head, he stared at that burn mark on Aaron's ribs. Marla, his brother's wife for 10 years. The woman who'd seemed charming at first, then controlling, then cold. Aaron had made excuses. "Marriage is hard," he'd say. "We're working through things." Evan had never liked her, but he'd never imagined this. "Listen to me, Lily." He crouched down, meeting her eyes. "I need you to be brave, okay? Can you do that?" She nodded, wiping her nose. "Don't say anything to your mother about what you heard. Not yet. I'm going to figure this out, but I need time. Can you trust me?" "I trust you, Uncle Evan." "Good girl." He squeezed her shoulder. "Stay here with your dad. I need to make a phone call." Outside in the hallway, Evan pulled out his phone and stood by a window overlooking the parking lot. Rain streaked the glass. His hand shook as he scrolled through his contacts. If Marla had done something to Aaron, and he was starting to believe she had, she'd left evidence. People always did. They got sloppy, overconfident. He just needed to find it. But first, he needed to see the car. Lake Haven Police Department kept the wrecked vehicles behind the station in a fenced lot. Evan knew the layout because he'd helped build the fence 5 years ago, back when he'd taken odd construction jobs between boat orders. The gate had a padlock, but the chain link was old, and there was a gap near the back corner where the ground had settled. He waited until after midnight. The rain had stopped, leaving everything slick and dripping. Fog rolled in from a lake, thick enough to swallow sound. Evan parked 3 blocks away and walked, keeping to the shadows. He wore dark clothes and work gloves. Not because he planned to do anything illegal. The car was his brother's, after all, but because he didn't want to answer questions he couldn't yet answer himself. The lot was dark except for one floodlight near the gate, easy enough to avoid. He found a gap in the fence and squeezed through, catching his jacket on a wire. The fabric tore, and he kept moving. Aaron's sedan sat in the back row, crumpled like a tin can. The front end was smashed inward, the hood buckled. The windshield had spiderwebbed on the driver's side. Evan's stomach turned. He approached slowly, pulling out his phone for light. The driver's door hung open. The police had already processed it. He leaned in, careful not to touch anything. The interior smelled like deployed airbags and copper. Blood on the steering wheel, dried brown. Evan forced himself to look away, to focus. He circled the vehicle, checking the frame, the wheels, the undercarriage. Something had caused this. Brake failure, Marla had said. But brakes didn't just fail on a 2-year-old car that Aaron maintained religiously. Evan crouched by the front wheel, shining his light up into the wheel well. There, the brake line. He pulled the phone closer. The line had been severed, not torn or worn through. Cut. The edges were clean, precise. Someone had used a blade, sliced it at an angle that would have made the fluid leak slowly. Aaron might not have noticed until he tried to stop. Widow's Bend. A sharp curve with a steep drop. If your brakes failed there, you'd go over. Simple. Efficient. Murder dressed as accident. Evan took photos from multiple angles, his hands steady despite the rage building in his chest. He captured the cut, the angle, the surrounding components. Then he backed up and photographed the whole vehicle. A voice in his head, his old sergeant's voice from his army days, told him to think, not react. Evidence meant nothing without proof of intent. He needed more. He sent the clearest photo to Tommy Reeves, a mechanic in Portland he'd served with overseas. Tommy owed him a favor from a bar fight in Kandahar that Evan had taken the fall for. The text was simple. This looked like an accident to you? The response came through 3 minutes later. That's sabotage. No accident. Clean cut. Someone knew what they were doing. Evan stared at the words until they burned into his mind. Then he deleted the message thread, pocketed his phone, and slipped back through the fence. He didn't go home. Instead, he drove to the lake and sat in his truck with the windows down, listening to water lap against the shore. His breath fogged in the cold air. Marla had tried to kill Aaron. She'd cut his brake line and sent him off Widow's Bend, and now his brother lay in a hospital bed, machines breathing for him, while she played the grieving wife. The rage was there, hot and immediate, but under it ran something colder, something patient. Evan had learned patience in the army. He'd learned to wait in the dark, to watch, to strike only when the moment was perfect. He'd learned that revenge taken in anger was revenge wasted. Marla had made one critical mistake. Aaron was still alive, and Lily had seen through her mother's performance. Evan pulled out his phone again and opened a notes app. He started typing, organizing his thoughts. What he knew, what he needed to find out. What came next? By the time the sun rose over the lake, painting the water gold and pink, he had a plan. It started with patience. It started with playing the part of the concerned brother, the helpful uncle. It started with making Marla believe she'd won. And it ended with justice. Evan started the truck and drove back toward Lake Haven General. He stopped at a coffee shop first, bought 3 coffees and a box of donuts. Comfort food, the kind of thing a grieving family needed. When he walked into Aaron's hospital room, Marla looked up from her chair. She'd changed clothes, a soft gray sweater now, her hair pulled back. The perfect picture of exhausted worry. Evan, you're back. You didn't have to. Brought breakfast. He set the box down, handed her a coffee. Figured you could use it. How is he? No change. She sipped the coffee, her shoulders sagging just slightly. The doctors say we just have to wait. Then we wait. Evan pulled up a chair on Aaron's other side. I'm not going anywhere. He's my brother. Something flickered across Marla's face. Was it relief? Satisfaction? Before she smoothed it away. That means a lot. Lily will be glad you're here. Where is she? My mother took her home. She needs routine, normalcy. Evan nodded slowly. Of course Marla had separated the girl from her father. Easier to control the narrative that way. He sat with Aaron for the next 2 hours, making small talk with Marla, watching her. She checked her phone constantly. She made calls about the car insurance, about medical bills, about flowers for the inevitable funeral she was already planning in her head. And she never once actually looked at Aaron. Not really. Her gaze slid over him like he was already gone. The week crawled past like a wounded thing. Evan established a routine. Mornings at the hospital, afternoons working in his shop, evenings back at the hospital until visiting hours ended. He brought Marla coffee. He helped her fill out insurance paperwork. He was gentle and patient and useful. And the whole time, he watched. Marla was good at her role. She cried at the right moments, when nurses came in, when doctors delivered grim updates. She wore simple clothes and minimal makeup. She spoke in soft, wounded tones about how much she loved Aaron, how she couldn't imagine life without him. But when she thought no one was looking, her mask slipped. Evan caught it in small moments. The way she drummed her fingers when a doctor mentioned long-term care costs. The way her jaw tightened when they discussed the possibility of Aaron waking up with brain damage. The way she brightened, just for a second, when someone mentioned the ventilator could be unplugged. She wanted him dead. She needed him dead. Evan played his part perfectly. He was the grieving brother, numb and tired. He asked no difficult questions. He made no accusations. He was wallpaper, background noise, harmless. On the fourth day, Marla invited him to the house for dinner. "Lily misses you," she said, "and I could use the company. It's so empty there without Aaron." The house was a two-story colonial at the end of a quiet street, the kind of place that screamed comfortable middle-class success. Aaron had bought it 7 years ago, right after Lily was born. He'd called Evan, voice bursting with pride, describing the yard and the garage and the built-in bookshelves. Evan pulled into the driveway behind Marla's BMW. The yard was immaculate, professional landscaping, perfect hedges, not a leaf out of place. Aaron had hated yard work. This was all Marla. She answered the door in jeans and a cardigan, looking softer than she did at the hospital. "Come in." Lily's upstairs, finishing homework. The interior matched the outside. Tasteful, expensive, sterile. Everything coordinated. Everything in its place. Evan had only been here a handful of times. Aaron usually suggested meeting at a restaurant instead. Now he understood why. This wasn't a home. It was a showroom. "Can I get you a drink?" Marla moved toward the kitchen. "Just water, thanks." She poured water into a crystal glass. Of course it was crystal, and handed it to him. "I wanted to talk to you about something." Evan's pulse kicked up, but he kept his face neutral. "Sure. The doctors, they're saying Aaron might not wake up. And even if he does..." She looked away, theatrical in her pain. "He might not be Aaron anymore. Brain damage, cognitive impairment. I have to think about what's best for Lily. What's best for Lily is her father. I agree, but we have to be realistic." Marla leaned against the counter, her arms crossed. "Aaron has a life insurance policy. A good one. When he passes, it will cover everything. Lily's college, the house. I won't have to worry." There it was. Not even a week, and she was already counting the money. Evan took a slow sip of water. "How much?" "The policy?" She named a number that made his stomach turn. "He updated it a few months ago. Said he wanted to make sure we'd be taken care of, if anything happened." A few months ago, right around when Lily overheard that phone call. Evan set down his glass. "Marla, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you love him?" She blinked, thrown by the directness. Then her face arranged itself into sadness. "What kind of question is that?" "Of course I love him. He's my husband. Just seems like you're already planning the funeral." Her expression hardened for just a second before smoothing out. "I'm being practical, Evan. Someone has to be. You can sit at his bedside all you want, but the bills don't stop coming. Life doesn't stop, right?" He nodded slowly. "Well, I should probably see Lily before I go. She's in her room. Second door on the left upstairs." Evan climbed the stairs, his mind racing. Marla was more desperate than he'd thought. She wasn't just waiting for Aaron to die. She was actively preparing for it, making sure all the pieces were in place. He knocked on Lily's door. "It's Uncle Evan. Come in." The room was the only part of the house that felt alive. Drawings covered the walls, books spilled from shelves, stuffed animals clustered on the bed. Lily sat at her desk, a math worksheet in front of her. She jumped up and hugged him. "I'm glad you're here. How are you holding up, kiddo?" Okay, I guess. She pulled back, lowering her voice. Mom's been acting weird. Weird how? Happy. When she thinks I'm not looking, she smiles. Lily's face twisted with confusion and hurt. Dad's dying, and she's happy. Evan crouched down to her level. Listen to me. I need you to do something for me. What? Keep your eyes open. If you see anything strange, papers, phone calls, anything, I need to know. But be careful. Don't let your mom catch you looking. Lily's eyes went wide. You're investigating her. I'm making sure your dad gets justice. She nodded, solemn. I can help. I know you can. You're smart, just like Aaron. He squeezed her shoulder. But you have to be careful. Can you do that? I can. They talked for a few more minutes. About school, about nothing important before Evan headed back downstairs. Marla was in the kitchen, going through mail. I should get going, he said. Thanks for coming by. She walked him to the door. It helps having family around. Evan nodded. At the door, he paused. Marla, if you need anything, paperwork, errands, whatever, just call. I want to help. Her smile was genuine this time, because she thought he was harmless. Thought he was buying her performance. You're a good brother, Evan. He left, keeping his expression neutral until he was in his truck. Then he gripped the steering wheel and let out a long breath. She'd handed him the motive, a life insurance policy worth more than $1 million. Updated recently. Convenient. Now I needed to find out who helped her. Because Marla didn't strike him as someone who got her hands dirty. She needed an accomplice. The answer came 3 days later, delivered by Lily. Evan was in his workshop when his phone buzzed. A text from his niece. Found something. In the kitchen trash. Mom doesn't know I saw. Attached was a photo, slightly blurry but readable. A receipt from an auto parts store. Fuel additive. Purchased the night before Aaron's crash. The date stamp was clear. Evan zoomed in on the signature line. The card name was C. Horn. He pulled up his laptop and did a quick search. Caleb Horn, age 38. Aaron's business partner in a small accounting firm they'd started 5 years ago. Evan had met Caleb once at a company barbecue. Slick hair, expensive watch, smile too wide. The kind of guy who called everyone buddy and dominated conversations. Aaron had mentioned tension at work lately. Disagreements over expanding the business. Caleb pushing too hard. A business partner who'd benefit from Aaron being gone. Evan sent Lily a careful reply. Good work. Delete this message after you read it. Keep being careful. She responded with a simple thumbs up, then the messages vanished. Evan sat back in his chair, his mind connecting dots. Marla and Caleb. It made sense. Caleb had access to Aaron's car. They carpooled sometimes, shared the office parking garage. He could have cut the brake line without raising suspicion. But Evan needed proof. He needed to see them together. Following Marla was surprisingly easy. She had a routine. Hospital in the morning, lunch out, errands in the afternoon, home by 4. She moved through her days like clockwork, predictable and contained. On the 5th day of surveillance, the pattern broke. Evan sat in his truck across from the hospital parking lot, engine off, watching. At noon, Marla emerged and got into her BMW. Instead of heading toward downtown, where she usually lunched, she drove south toward the lake. Evan followed at a distance. She pulled into the parking lot of a diner called The Anchor, a rundown place that locals used and tourists avoided. Strange choice for someone who preferred organic cafes. He parked down the street and waited. 10 minutes later, a silver Lexus pulled in. Evan recognized it from the company barbecue. Caleb. The man got out, glanced around, and went inside. Evan grabbed his phone and crossed the street, keeping his head down. He found a position by the dumpsters on the side of the building, partially hidden by an old delivery truck. Not ideal, but it gave him a view through the diner's windows. Marla sat in a back booth, away from other customers. Caleb slid in across from her. Even from this distance, Evan could see the intimacy, the way they leaned toward each other, the way Marla touched Caleb's hand. Then Caleb leaned across the table and kissed her. Not a quick peck. A real kiss, deep and hungry. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. Evan took photos. His hand stayed steady, even though fury burned through his veins. He captured them holding hands, captured another kiss, captured the way Marla's face lit up when she looked at Caleb, the way she never looked at Aaron. They stayed for 40 minutes. When they finally left, separately. Evan had everything he needed. Back in his truck, he pulled up a template on his laptop. Insurance investigator letterhead, official and intimidating. He wasn't above a little forgery when justice demanded it. That night, Evan printed the photos in his workshop. He laid them out on his workbench, studying them. Marla and Caleb, frozen in betrayal. His phone rang. The hospital. His heart stopped. Mr. Dorsey? This is Lake Haven General. Your brother's condition has deteriorated. You should come now. Evan was in his truck before the nurse finished speaking. He broke every speed limit, praying to a God he wasn't sure he believed in. When he reached Aaron's room, the doctor was waiting outside. Dr. Patel, a small woman with kind eyes. I'm sorry, she said. His brain's swelling increased dramatically. We've done everything we can, but... She paused, choosing words carefully. He's not going to recover. At this point, we're keeping him comfortable. Evan felt the world tilt. How long? Days. Maybe a week. He nodded, unable to speak. Dr. Patel squeezed his arm and left. Inside, Aaron looked the same. Tubes and machines, and the steady beep of a heart that didn't know it was time to stop. Evan sat beside his brother and took his hand. I'm going to fix this, he whispered. She's not going to get away with it. I swear to you, Aaron. I swear. The machines beeped their agreement. Marla arrived an hour later with Lily. The girl's eyes were swollen from crying. She went straight to her father's bedside, taking his other hand. Daddy. Her voice broke. Please wake up. Marla stood at the foot of the bed, dry-eyed. The doctor said it's time to start thinking about arrangements. Evan looked at her. She met his gaze without flinching. Not yet, he said. Evan, he's suffering. Not yet. He repeated, harder. Something passed between them, a test of wills. Marla looked away first. Fine, but we can't avoid reality forever. She left to make phone calls. To call Caleb, probably. To celebrate that their plan was working. Evan watched her go, his jaw tight. She'd made one final mistake. She'd given him a timeline. Days. Maybe a week. That was all the time he had to finish this. It would be enough. Caleb Horn received an email at 9:47 p.m. from an address he didn't recognize. businessopportunities_pdx@mail.com. The subject line read, Partnership Opportunity, Confidential. The message was brief. Mr. Horn, I represent an investment group interested in acquiring established accounting firms in the Pacific Northwest. Your firm came highly recommended. I'd like to discuss a potential buyout that would be very favorable to remaining partners. Are you available to meet tomorrow evening? Given the sensitive nature of this discussion, I prefer to meet at a neutral location. I'll be at the Old Riverside Warehouse at 7 p.m. If you're interested, come alone. Best regards, Jay Morrison. Caleb stared at his phone, sitting in his apartment with a whiskey in hand. A buyout. With Aaron dying, and the insurance money would flow to Marla, some of which they'd agreed to invest in expanding the business. This could be the opportunity he'd been waiting for. He replied, I'll be there. Evan deleted the fake email account and sat back in his workshop. The trap was set. The Riverside Warehouse had been abandoned for a decade, ever since the lumber mill shut down. It sat at the edge of the industrial district, windows broken, roof sagging. The perfect place for a private conversation. Evan arrived an hour early. He walked the perimeter, checking sight lines, making sure no one else was around. The nearest building was 100 yards away. No cameras, no witnesses. He parked his truck out of sight and waited inside the warehouse, standing near a support beam. Rain drummed on the metal roof. Water dripped through rust holes, pooling on the concrete floor. At 7:03, headlights swept through the broken windows. A car door opened and closed. Footsteps hesitant. Hello, Mr. Morrison. Evan stepped into the light from Caleb's phone flashlight. There is no Morrison. Caleb jerked back, squinting. Ooh, Evan, what the hell is this? I think you know. The man's face went through several expressions. Confusion, recognition, fear. He turned to leave. I wouldn't. Evan pulled out his phone, showing the photos. Caleb and Marla, kissing, holding hands. Unless you want these to go to the police. Along with this, he held up a second photo, the cut brake line. Caleb went white. I don't know what you're talking about. You helped her kill my brother. No, I didn't touch the car. I swear. Then what did you do? Evan stepped closer. His voice was calm, measured, dangerous in its control. Because you're involved. The receipt for the fuel additive. The life insurance policy. I'm guessing you helped arrange that too, didn't you? Helped her make sure it was big enough to be worth killing for. Caleb held up his hands. Okay, look. Yes, I knew about the insurance. Marla said Aaron wanted to update it. Asked me to recommend a broker. You thought it was convenient. You thought you'd get a piece of the money. She said. Caleb swallowed hard. She said it would look like an accident. Just an accident. I didn't think she'd actually. You knew exactly what she was doing. Evan's hands flexed. It would be easy to hurt this man. So easy. You were sleeping with her. Planning Aaron's murder. Waiting to cash in. I never touched the car, Caleb insisted, desperate now. That was all her. She did it herself. I just didn't stop her. I know I should have, but you wanted the money. Caleb's silence was confirmation. Evan pulled out a folded paper from his jacket. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign this confession. You're going to detail everything. The affair, the insurance policy, Marla's plan. Everything. I can't. Evan stepped into his space. He'd done this before, in another desert, with men who thought violence was their only language. He learned how to make himself a threat without throwing a single punch. You can, he said softly. Or these photos go to the police tonight, along with the brake line evidence. They'll investigate. They'll find your connection to Aaron, to Marla. They'll follow the money. You'll go to prison for conspiracy to commit murder. Or, he held out the paper and a pen. You sign this, and I give you a way out. What way out? You leave. Tonight. Empty your bank accounts, get in your car, and drive. Mexico, Canada, I don't care. Just disappear. Leave Marla to hang for what she did. Caleb's hand shook as he took the paper. She'll know it was me. She'll suspect. She won't be able to prove it. Not where she's going. The man read the confession, his face crumbling. Everything was there, dates, details, amounts. A complete picture of conspiracy. If I sign this, Caleb said slowly, how do I know you won't still turn me in? You don't. But right now you have a choice. Sign and run, or don't sign and rot in prison. Clock's ticking. Caleb looked at the paper for a long moment. Then with a hand that barely worked, he signed his name. Evan took it, folded it carefully, and put it in his jacket. Now to get out of here. If I ever see you again, the deal's off. Caleb ran. His footsteps echoed through the warehouse, then faded. An engine started and tires squealed. Evan stood alone in the dark, holding the signed confession. Stage 1 complete. Aaron died 4 days later, on a gray Tuesday morning when the rain fell so hard it sounded like static. Evan was in the room when the machines finally stopped their rhythm. He held his brother's hand and felt the last warmth leave. Marla stood on the other side, performing grief for the nurses who came in to officially call the time. I'm so sorry for your loss, the nurse said softly. Marla buried her face in her hands. I can't believe he's gone. Evan said nothing. He leaned down and kissed Aaron's forehead, whispering words only his brother would hear. Rest easy. I got this. The funeral was 3 days later. Lake Haven Community Church filled with people who'd known Aaron, colleagues, neighbors, the guys from his softball team. The casket sat at the front, closed. Aaron had specified cremation in his will, but Marla had insisted on a viewing first. Evan suspected she wanted the drama. He sat in the front row with Lily pressed against his side. The girl wore a black dress and hadn't spoken all morning. Across the aisle, Marla sat surrounded by her friends, dabbing her eyes with an embroidered handkerchief. The pastor spoke about loss and faith and eternal rest. Evan barely heard it. His mind was on the folder in his truck, the one he'd assembled carefully over the last week. Inside, the brake line photos. The pictures of Marla and Caleb. Caleb's signed confession. A paper trail showing the life insurance policy update. A recording, pieced together from phone calls Evan had convinced Marla to take while his phone accidentally recorded, where she discussed the policy payout with her lawyer. Everything he needed to destroy her. After the service, people gathered at Aaron's house for a reception. Evan helped carry food inside, accepted condolences from people who barely knew him, and waited. Marla played her part beautifully. She moved through the crowd with grace, accepting hugs, thanking people for coming. She looked every inch the devastated widow. When the crowd thinned, Evan found her in the kitchen. She was pouring wine, her mask slipping just slightly now that fewer people were watching. Evan, thank you for everything these past few weeks. I couldn't have managed without you. I found some of Aaron's financial papers in his workshop, he said quietly. Stuff about the business, the insurance. Thought you might need them for the claims. Her eyes sharpened with interest. That'll be helpful. I'll bring them by tomorrow. Save you the trouble of digging through his files. You're so thoughtful. She touched his arm, a gesture that was probably meant to be comforting but felt calculated. I've been meaning to talk to you about Lily. What about her? I think it might be good for her to spend more time with you. Get away from the house, from the memories. Would you be willing to take her on weekends? Evan's jaw tightened. Marla was already planning to offload her daughter, to make room for her new life with Caleb. Except Caleb was long gone by now, halfway to the border if he had any sense. Of course, Evan said. Lily's always welcome. Perfect. Marla's smile was genuine for once, because everything was falling into place for her. Aaron was dead, the insurance money would be hers, and she was free. Evan smiled back. I'll see you tomorrow then. With those papers. He left before his expression could give him away. The next evening, Evan knocked on Marla's door at exactly 6 p.m. She answered in yoga pants and a sweater, her hair pulled back. Casual. Comfortable. Already moving on. Come in. Can I get you something to drink? I'm fine. He held up a manila folder. The papers. They sat in the living room, the same sterile showroom that had never felt like Aaron's home. Marla took the folder and opened it, her eyes scanning the first page. Her expression changed gradually. Confusion, then realization, then horror. What is this? Everything, Evan said calmly. Photos of you and Caleb. The break line. Caleb's confession. The insurance policy timeline. All of it. Marla's face went white. Where did you? This is evidence. Evidence that you murder my brother. She stood abruptly, the folders spilling papers across the floor. You can't prove anything. Caleb's lying if he said. Caleb's gone. Ran 3 days ago. Left you holding the bag. Evan leaned back in his chair, watching her unravel. But his signature is real. The photos are real. The break line evidence is real. Want to know what else is real? The insurance company already got an anonymous tip about possible fraud. They put a hold on your payout pending investigation. You bastard. She lunged at him, nails out. Evan caught her wrist easily, standing to his full height. She was tall, but he was taller and stronger and done pretending. You killed Aaron, he said softly. You cut his brake line and sent him off that cliff. You burned him with something, a stun gun, maybe, to keep him dazed after the crash so he couldn't call for help. You cashed in a life insurance policy you'd set up just for this, and you thought you'd get away with it. Marla jerked her arm free, breathing hard. He was weak. He was holding me back. And you're nobody. A washed-up veteran playing carpenter. The police won't believe you. Maybe not, but they'll investigate. And when they do, they'll find everything I've found. The receipt Lily pulled from your trash. Yeah, your daughter's been watching you. The paper trail. The phone record between you and Caleb. It'll all come out. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Marla's eyes widened. What did you do? I called the police 30 minutes ago. Told them I had evidence of insurance fraud and possible foul play in my brother's death. They're very interested. No. She backed toward the door. No. Blue and red lights flashed through the windows. Car door slammed. A knock, hard and official. Police. Open up. Marla looked at Evan, her face crumbling. Please, I'll split the money with you. Whatever you want. I want my brother back. Since I can't have that. Evan walked to the door and opened it. 2 officers stood on the porch, hands on their belts. I want justice. He handed the lead officer, Sergeant Dawes, a man Evan knew from the VFW, a copy of the folder. Everything you need is in here. Evidence of conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and obstruction of justice. Marla Dorsey is your suspect. Dawes flipped through the pages, his expression hardening. He looked at Marla, who'd frozen in the middle of the living room. "Mrs. Dorsey, we need you to come with us. This is insane. He's framing me. We'll sort it out at the station." Dawes nodded to his partner, who moved forward with handcuffs. Marla fought briefly before going limp. They cuffed her and read her rights in that flat, practiced tone. As they let her out, she turned to look at Evan one last time. "You did this," she hissed. "No," Evan said quietly. "You did this the moment you touched my brother's car." They put her in the back of the cruiser. The lights spun, painting the perfect suburban street in shades of emergency. Evan watched until they drove away. Then he went upstairs to find Lily. She was in her room, headphones on, probably try to block out the chaos. When she saw him, she yanked them off. "His mom. She's going away for a long time," Evan said. "Pack a bag. You're coming home with me." Lily nodded and started gathering clothes. She moved mechanically in shock. "Uncle Evan." She paused, holding a stuffed bear. "What's going to happen now?" "Now." He crouched down, meeting her eyes. "Now we heal. We remember your dad. And we move forward. Together. Together." She hugged him tight, and Evan held her, this small, fierce girl who'd been brave enough to see the truth when everyone else had been blind. Outside, the rain started again, washing the street clean. Spring came to Lake Haven with the slow patience of something long awaited. The ice on the lake melted first, revealing dark water that lapped against the shore in gentle rhythms. Then the trees began to bud, tight green fists unclenching into leaves. Flowers pushed through the soil in Aaron's old garden. The one Marla had never tended, but Evan found himself maintaining now. For months had passed since the arrest. Marla's trial lasted 3 weeks. The prosecution had built their case carefully, using everything Evan had provided plus their own investigation. They'd found more: text messages between Marla and Caleb that confirmed the affair, receipts for the stun gun purchased under a fake name, proof that she'd researched brake line sabotage online. Caleb, when they finally tracked him down in a motel outside Tijuana, had cooperated fully in exchange for a lighter sentence. He testified about the plan, about Marla's cold determination, about how she'd laughed when describing Aaron as too trusting. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, attempted fraud. The judge gave her 30 years without possibility of parole for 15. Evan had sat through every day of the trial, Lily beside him. The girl needed to see it, needed to understand that justice, while slow, eventually came. When a verdict was read, Marla had turned to look at them one final time. Her face was hollow, aged a decade in 4 months. She tried to mouth something: "I'm sorry," or "I hate you." Evan couldn't tell, but he'd simply looked away. Some people didn't deserve his attention anymore. Now, on a Saturday morning in March, Evan stood at the edge of the lake with Lily. The sun was bright, but not warm yet, more promise than delivery. They'd driven to Aaron's favorite spot, a quiet cove where the water was deep and clear. Lily held the urn carefully. It was simple ceramic, blue like the lake. "Are you ready?" Evan asked softly. She nodded. "Can I say something first?" "Of course." Lily looked out at the water, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. "Dad, I miss you every day. I miss how you made pancakes on Sunday, and how you always knew when I had a bad dream, even before I told you. I miss your terrible jokes and the way you sang off-key in the car." She paused, swallowing hard. "Mom did a terrible thing, but Uncle Evan made sure she paid for it. You can rest now. We're okay. We're going to be okay." She opened the urn and tilted it toward the water. Gray ash spilled out, catching the breeze, drifting across the surface of the lake. Some sank immediately. Some floated, making patterns in the light. Evan put his hand on Lily's shoulder and stood silent. As the last of the ashes settled, he reached into his pocket. Inside was a small silver pendant, a heart on a chain. Marla's. She'd been wearing it the day of Aaron's crash, had taken it off in the hospital, and left it on the bedside table. Evan had pocketed it, evidence for later. But the trial was over now. Justice had been served. He pulled out the pendant and held it over the water. It caught the sun, throwing tiny rainbows. "For Aaron," he said quietly, and let it go. The pendant splashed once and sank, disappearing into the dark. Lily looked up at him. Was that Mom's? Doesn't matter anymore. They stood there for a while longer, watching the water. A bird called from somewhere in the trees. The world continued its slow turn, indifferent to human grief and human justice alike. Finally, Lily spoke. Uncle Evan, do you think Dad will be proud of us? Evan considered the question. He thought about Aaron, gentle and trusting, who'd loved his wife even when she was planning his death. Would he have wanted revenge? Would he have approved of the careful, methodical way Evan had destroyed Marla's life? Maybe not. Aaron had been the forgiving one, the one who believed in second chances. But Aaron was gone, and Evan had done what was necessary. What was right, even if it wasn't kind. I think, he said carefully, your dad would be proud that you were brave, that you saw the truth and didn't look away, that you helped save yourself by trusting me. And you? Would he be proud of you? Evan looked at the lake, at the place where the ashes had mixed with water and become something else. Something eternal. I think he'd understand. Lily nodded, accepting this. She was getting good at accepting hard truths. Too good for a kid her age. They walked back to the truck together. Evan had converted his workshop's upper floor into a proper bedroom for her, complete with bookshelves and a window overlooking the lake. She was doing better in school now, making friends, started to smile more often. Some nights, she still had nightmares. Some nights, Evan did too. Dreams of Aaron in the hospital, of the moment the machine stopped, of all the ways he could have failed. But mostly, they were healing. As they drove away from the lake, Lily turned on the radio. A country song played, something about starting over. She sang along, off-key, just like her father. Evan allowed himself a small smile. Justice wasn't always about the law. Sometimes it was simpler than that, making sure the guilty paid, protecting the innocent, and moving forward with the weight of what you'd done sitting square on your shoulders. He could carry that weight. For Aaron. For Lily. Forever if he had to. Some people called it revenge. Evan called it balance.